Welcome back to Congo Unfiltered. I'm your host, Gaëtan Nzowo. I'm glad to be back. Happy Saturday, everyone. Happy weekend. So today's episode, we are going to discuss, or we're going to do a deep dive into, I would say, one of the most consequential diplomatic and economic development in the Congo's recent history. Not that the peace deal or agreements that we've seen in the past or less than this one, but it's very important for us to dive deep so that you guys can at least understand what I'm talking about, right? Um, so we are going to discuss the strategic partnership agreement between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the United States of America. So that was signed on December 4th between the Congo, so President of the Congo, Tshisekedi, and the President of, I would say, you know, um, of the United States, Donald Trump. So let me see if we have that partnership somewhere. Um, so that deal that is very interesting. And what I'm gonna do in this live, I want to try to go with you, maybe talk overall, and if this needs to be to actually show you those articles. But I'm really encouraging all of you, whatever you're free, whenever you have time or you want to read something, just go ahead and read that deal, because a lot of people saying that, oh, it's a good deal, oh, it's going to bring peace to the Congo, oh, there is absolutely nothing bad, nothing wrong about this deal. My question is always will be, have you read it? Have you read the agreement? If you have read the agreement, what do you think about such and such? So we'll be doing this. So this deal is being really presented as obviously that's the Congolese PR talking, that's the American PR talking. It's being presented as really a milestone in really diplomatic, I would say, cooperation, economic partnership, and also this really global supply chain strategy. So, but as with so many agreements, like I mentioned, involving Congo's resources and the foreign powers, there are really deeper questions really that we need to ask ourselves, right? So today we're going to unpack this document. I have no guest, it's just me, so I hope that you like me, you have enjoyed me presenting this. Last time we had Kambale, there are still videos in the making that will be put out there. Very, very interesting. Live, if you haven't watched that, go back and watch the live from last week. It was fire. Talking to the elite, talking to the Congolese youth, talking to people, the friends of the Congo. You need to go back and read it and watch it. So we're going to look at what the agreement actually says, right? And we will talk about what it doesn't say and what that silence really mean. And we will explore the implication for Congo's sovereignty. I think that's very important because we say free Congo, but do people really understand what it means to be free? Like what it means when you want to say, like, for example, like free Palestine. What does it mean to be free? When you say free Congo, what does it mean to be free? So we will explore that implication for in the case of the Congo particularly, what that means for Congo's sovereignty, what that means for the Congolese people, and for the future of our natural wealth. But we'll ask a simple question, and very, very essential. Is this partnership really about cooperation, or is it about control? So the really text, to just get started, let me see if I can share this. Uh, and the text really, you know, uh, don't want you all to to have access to the cookie and stuff, but so let me me see. I think that's it. Let's see. Having technical difficulties. Let me see. Okay. Okay. So really this argument, as you can see, I pulled it up and you can go ahead and just honestly just go ahead and watch it, right? And read it. So it's the language really sounds familiar in terms of the shared goals and mutual respect, collaboration, and peace and prosperity, right? That the same thing. It really it goes and acknowledge, and you can see that really the long standing, I would say, relationship between the US and the Congo really go and expresses even a desire to elevate, and which is kind of like ironic, to elevate that relationship into something strategic, right? But what does even strategic mean? And even on the title of today's show, strategic for who, right? And in diplomatic language, really, um, in diplomatic language, really, it's very important for people to understand those terms, right? When used by states, by countries, it really typically, right? Not always, means or signals more than friendship, right? It's like you have trusted access to my resources, to my house, to my country. It also shows really long-term alignment and also, shared interest. But that's from an American perspective. They always talk about the national security, and because we those assets or those minerals are critical, because they are critical, it is engaging, it involves the national security threats. Having China, by the World Bank, that's the World Bank saying by 2030, China will own essentially 46% of the world cobalt. That is a threat to the US national security, just on that standpoint. And we know that most of the cobalt comes out is in the Congo, right? So because of that, the US has trying to craft a draft policies that will essentially guide the the politics of the United States vis-a-vis of China. But I also ask myself, what is it what is the policy of the Congo when it comes to its national security, when it comes to those critical minerals? I don't know. Honestly, I really don't. I don't know. I have no answer to provide with you to you guys. But really, what we see in these agreements, it really in this partnership that they are calling, it really lays out this really broad areas or of corporations, economic, the security, infrastructure, minerals, and also investment. And not just investment, you also have the trading to that, the governance, and obviously stability. But that really sounds like with any two countries, right, that would want. But when we look really closer, when you really look closer to the agreements, we see that this language is not neutral at all. Like there is no neutrality in that agreement. It is really one way, just like we have said that the peace agreement signed between the Congo and Rwanda, facilitated by the US, was one way in favor of Rwanda. I read this even this morning, woke up at 4 or 5 a.m. and I was reading it, um, and trying to dissect. And last week, we actually, with Friends of the Congo, we did threads on X that we published explaining, right? That we explain that in English, we explain that in French. On X is out there for y'all to read. There was also a video that our executive director Morris Carney explaining about the strategic asset reserve. He's also somehow explaining that. The video is available on Instagram. So it is really framed, this US DRC strategic partnership is really framed in terms that allow the United States to engage in Congo's internal economic planning, infrastructure development, and resource governments, which is great, which is really interesting because that is even challenging the core of Congolese sovereignty in ways that go that go really far beyond past bilateral aid programs. And that's why I said it is perhaps the most consequential and dangerous agreements that the Congo has ever signed. I'm probably gonna say arguably because not really familiar about all the treaties and agreements signed in the past. But I'm still gonna go ahead and take that risk and say that. So because we have what we call, or what they call, the SAR, the Strategic Asset Reserve. And then it is one of the most, I would say, important and least understood aspects of this agreement. Um, and the concept known as strategic asset reserve, or SAR, is even interesting, right? Because this reserve really is described as a mechanism to identify and classify key mineral and economic assets, and especially those tied to the critical minerals, right? So they are broken into different categories and special categories that will be managed, and that's also essential and really really funny when you talk about the sovereignty of the Congo, managed jointly with American involvement. And don't get me wrong, I love America, I love the United States, but then again, it's going back to the core of what it means to be a nation, a sovereign nation as the Congo, what it means to even say free Congo, right? We always talk about freecongo.org, free Congo campaign, and how you can help. But these are not just hashtag, right? Like at some points, we need to bring those words, those phrases into the reality when it comes to the Congo. When you say the Congo is a nation, we have a president, we have institutions. But what does it mean to be president? What does it mean to have institutions? What does it mean to have a currency, to have a national anthem, when your own minerals are not controlled by Congolese people themselves? And the will of the people are not taken into consideration, right? And those special minerals or strategic asset reserve, the minerals that are part of the strategic asset reserve, we have cobalt, we have copper, we have lithium, we have tantalum, we have gold, we name it, coltan, even Colombian tantalum, right? And there was actually something Defense of the Congo was able to repost today, talking about the data that are out regarding Rwanda, and since the beginning of the war, it's it's very interesting that Rwanda export of coltan has skyrocketed. And I'm quoting Africa Confidential tweet. Rwanda's export of coltan has skyrocketed by 213% from January to June 2025, compared with the same period in 2024, after the M23 seized vast of eastern Congo, including the Rubaya, the biggest coltan mine in the world, 213% increase from last year. So these are minerals that the global economy now considers as strategic, that the United States sees or considers as strategic, that it has to fight China, that it has to provide or put forward policies to counter China, right? Because there is China and the United States, West, East. So that means that those minerals that I just mentioned are essential for the electric vehicle batteries, the renewable energy infrastructure, the high-tech manufacturing, the aerospace and defense technology. So the agreements here really authorizes the inclusion, I would say, of those specific assets, projects, minerals, and right into this reserve. Essentially, there are earmarking, right, them as priorities under this partnership framework. It's very important for us to really understand that. But what does that even mean in practice, right? It means that these assets become subjects to a really new governance framework, one in which the United States, through its agencies, a designated partner has who has partners that have like a special access, right? Special access, priority engagement rights, influence over how they are developed, financed, and also integrated into the global supply chain. So it's really different from the Congo. It's not the same as an open market where the Congo chooses partner freely, because what the current model is offering, right? There's an open market because that's capitalism anyway. Anyways, when you talk about capitalism, it's free market. It's equal opportunities, equal rights. You want to do business in the Congo as a Chinese firm, as a Canadian firm, as a French firm, as an American firm. You come in, and the Congo has that right to decide which one is bringing a better deal for the Congolese people, which one is bringing us, by us, I'm talking about Congolese, better revenue, for example, better deal. And then based on that and based on other criteria, you pick, because that's your sovereign prerogative, to pick what company you will be giving them the right or the permit to operate in the Congo. But this framework is very different because it is providing the United States a preferred access. So in many cases before, like I mentioned, the Congolese national companies, regional investors, and even other global partners would just come. But this time is different. This time, the United States gets priority. It gets priority, not just priority, but also prevents the partnership also prevent Chinese companies to have access to the strategic asset reserve. So that is what strategic asset access really means in that perspective. It's like the US gets a free pass, gets priority, gets access as number one. It doesn't matter if there is a country out there that will be providing a better deal to the Congo. That doesn't matter. That the US, according to this framework, according to this agreement, the US get priorities, right? So that's what is being said. Let me see if I can find as right to offer. I think right of first offer. Let me just pull that up because y'all need to see that. So it's right there. So it says right there, and I'm gonna read it. In implementing DRC designated strategic project, the DRC shall consider opportunities for participation by U.S. persons of aligned persons, including opportunities for producers and distributors of durable goods, and to include preferential access and first right to offer where appropriate and determined by both parties, including through joint venture, public-private partnership, and supply development programs are in accordance to the DRC's laws. And it's actually funny that they say DRC's law because this is really going in contradiction, violation of Congolese laws. Right here, SAR investment process. The DRC shall notify the Joint Steering Committee of any opportunity of SAR project strategic asset reserve. The DRC shall grant U.S. persons the right of first offer. That is, so that y'all don't say that I'm making things up. It's right there in the agreement, right? So closely linked to the strategic asset reserve is really the first concept of right of first offer. So under this agreement, as as we read together, the U.S. firms are often and will be given the first opportunity to negotiate access to projects. That will fall really under that reserve of other strategic categories. So on paper, right, this is designed to obviously encourage investment from US industry, right? To also create, I would say, a secure supply chains for critical minerals. They really want to make sure it is America first policy. And this is really aligning with that, right? And then also lastly, a prompt economic growth in the Congo. Uh, but economic growth that will not be tangible for the people of the Congo, as we have, as we know. Like they really gonna come. It's really on an extractivism uh, uh, model where the U.S. comes, extract, and leave. There is no industry transforming all those resources that will be created in the Congo. As a matter of fact, there are some created in Rwanda, and the part of the agreement says that so those minerals will be sent to Rwanda before being shipped here. So there is nothing in terms of really concrete, tangible change Congolese people can learn from that. But on the ground, this shift really like changes who has the first voice in the mining negotiations, right? So instead of, for example, prioritizing Congolese investors or companies of the diaspora, being at the front of the line, U.S. capital and corporation are really positioned as priority partners. So we are literally sidelining Congolese people, whether they are in the Congo, whether it is in the diaspora, to really give priorities to American companies, American persons, American multinationals. So it is really subtle but really important change. And I believe it's one that will shift that economic leverage. Congo already doesn't have has almost little to no leverage, right? But that is really, I would say, even removing that. So it is really a form of preferential access, right? That is not neutral for the Congolese perspective, for the Congolese interest, for Congo's interest. You're really trying to elevate that capital over what could have been a domestic economic empowerment, because it ties really Congo's minerals future to the interest of the U.S. industry and strategic policy concerns. So another part that I really found really interesting in this was the added addition of policy reforms. And I'm talking about Congolese policy, because the agreement referenced the needs for value addition, meaning that the DRC should not simply export raw minerals. And and it speaks really of encouraging processing and manufacturing capacity, but at the same time, it calls for regulatory reforms designed to attract foreign investment. So it's kind of like confusing, because really here's the nuance here is that value addition in Congo should mean that Congolese entrepreneurs, refinery projects, and even local industrial sector thrive. But when the policy framework and investment incentive are shaped by American strategic interests, foreign strategic interests, the gains here is to multinationals, corporations, rather than actually staying in the Congo, right? So the wording here matters, because they're really trying to craft it in a way that gives the illusion that it is allowing you to create this raffinery or to be able to do processing in the Congo, but at the same time, things are being dictated from the outside, right? Where the investment again, like I explained, will be beneficial not not to Congolese people, not to Congolese entrepreneurs, but to American entrepreneurs. So the agreement here encourages the transparent revenue management, which is good, and then also trying to strengthen that legal framework. Anti-corruption measures, obviously, you need to fight the corruption, and also the institutional reforms, and that's important. Institutional reforms that align more closely with global or American investors' requirements. So, all of this really sounds positive, and I'm going to go back to the institutional reforms. All of this sounds positive until you ask yourself the question, who defined investor requirements? Right? It's very important. So, they are defined by global capital norms, which really does not prioritize national sovereignty, as I'm really trying to explain to people. And I was in an off the record meeting earlier with the Congo's diaspora desk, Action for Congo, trying to explain to my fellow Congolese and other activists and human rights activists and just friends of the Congo the danger of this strategic partnership, because it is not just violating the constitution, the Congolese tax laws, the mining codes, but it's also putting in danger the national sovereignty, economic justice, and also the equitable wealth distribution. So, while the language here presented in this partnership really seems progressive, with the practical effects that can be shaped, you know, uh, can be shaped, by outside, but really shaping the Congolese resource management in ways that fits the needs of external markets and geopolitics, right? Um, and one part that I really wanted to explain, and that's maybe the next one, it is with the joint steering committee. Let me see if I can. So, right here. Where is it? Okay. So, this one, joint steering committee, because out of that, the party hereby established the JSC, Joint Steering Committee, composed of representatives from the DRC and the United States. The JSC shall serve as the primary platform to implement and achieve objective of this agreement. The first meeting of the JSC shall be held no later than 90 days after the entry into force of this agreement. Point two, very important. The Joint Steering Committee shall be composed of 5 officials from the United States and 5 officials from the DRC. The United States representative shall consist of 1 representative each from the Department of State, Treasury, Commerce, not sure how to say it in English, Commerce, I guess, and the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC, and 1 representative from an agency of the United States selected by the chair of the JSC from the United States of America, who may be from one of the agencies already included in this paragraph. And they talk about also the DRC representative, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Corporation, Affairs International Corporation, the Minister of National Economy, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Planning, and then the Office of the President. And they're saying that will be collectively that the both chair there will be co-chairs, right? And there'll be collectively the chairpersons. So one person from the US, one person from the Congo will be co-chairing this committee. And there was a point that I really want to mention. I talk about meeting twice a year. Point 8, the joint steering committee shall make decision described in this agreement by consensus. I don't know if y'all understand what that even means by consensus. So it means that if they cannot agree, if the United States and the Congo cannot come to an agreement, so all 10 people should be voting in favor. And I really don't see the representative from the Minister of Planning on the Congolese side of the Office of the President or the Minister of Foreign Affairs disagreeing, right? They will all be voting the same way. But if there is one representative who does not agree with what is being put forward, the motion doesn't pass. That's what consensus means. But what does it really also mean in terms of making decision when it comes to Congolese critical minerals? These are Congolese critical minerals. It means that the United States has a say, has a direct say into Congolese sovereignty, into a decision that is supposed to be the prerogative of the Congolese sovereignty at the discretion of the Congolese government, the Congolese president, the Congolese parliament. But they're saying that if the US, if one person, just one, and if that person is American, things don't move forward. Things don't move forward. And that is also in, I would say, violation of Congolese constitution. And I'm going to go ahead and read to you article, I think it's article 5 of the Constitution in English. I have it in French. Let me see. There you go. Find it. So, the article 5 of the Congolese Constitution says that the national sovereignty belongs to the people. All powers emanates from the people who exercise it directly or through their representatives. It also violates Article 214 of the Congolese Constitution that says peace treaties, commercial treaties, treaties relating to international organizations, those which engage state finances, modify legislative provisions, or concern the status of persons shall be submitted to the parliament for authorization before ratification. It violates Article 9 of the Congolese Constitution, which, and I quote, the state exercises permanent sovereignty over soil, subsoil, waters, forest, airspace, rivers, lakes, and the territorial sea. So what we have learned so far is that the deal is granting right of first offer to foreign entities. That's a critical point. That's the first critical point. The second is the majority ownership requirements favoring companies. I say foreign, but I actually mean Americans, right? It also talks about the external veto power via that joint committee. So if there is no consensus, if there is one person that is against it, the motion does not move forward. So that is in fact violating the sovereignty of the Congo in Article 9 of the Congolese Constitution, which does not allow, without a strict national safeguards, right? It does not allow people to, have a say in Congolese internal affairs, because it said that the states exercise permanent sovereignty over soil, subsoil, water, forest, airspace, river, lakes, and the territorial seas. Those minerals come from Congolese soil and subsoil. Yet the United States representative, 5 of them, can decide what they want. because they are following American policies. Again, everyone is here trying to stay within in the lane. They are following American policy, American first policy. What is the Congolese first policy, if we have any? What is the Congolese policy when it comes to the national security? And to go back to the Article 214 that says that if he engages, I guess, commercial treaties, peace treaties, treaty relating to international organizations, those which engage state finances, modify legislative provisions, or concern the status of person shall be submitted to parliaments for authorization before ratification. This agreement, signed on December 4th, engages directly state finances, provides a 10-year tax break or tax stabilization to American companies. And that's why there was a point, and let me see if I can find that. It says that 12 months after, let me see, I really want to quote exactly. 12 months after the signing of this project, they are encouraging or mandate of requiring the Congolese tax, the Congolese government to make reforms in terms of like the tax law, the mining code, and also the constitution. Okay, found it. We're gonna read that part together. The party recognizes that the United States may consider, I'm gonna skip this. 2. While the parties agree that the legal and fiscal regime of the mining codes and other applicable DRC laws shall constitute the sole and exhaustive DRC domestic legal framework governing SAR projects and QSP, the DRC intends to establish preferential fiscal tax and regulatory incentive for U.S. persons and align persons investing in the Strategic Asset Reserve projects and QSP where such projects are located in specific areas in accordance with Annex 1. A. The DRC commits to amend within 12 months from the entry into force the agreements law number 13 slash 005 of 11 February 2014 of the fiscal customs parafiscal non-tax revenue or foreign exchange regime applicable to collaboration agreements and cooperation projects and to undertake any legislative and constitutional reforms within a maximum period of 12 months in order to align its legal framework with the relevant provision of this agreement. I'm going to continue to read. A renewable fiscal stabilization clause for an initial period of 10 years, so 10 years of tax break, essentially. Introduction of a binding 90 days VAT reimbursement periods, offset mechanism allowing overpaid to be credited against other tax obligations, and all of this is about tax. But I don't know. I don't know if you guys can even read the urgency or the gravity of how things are. The seriousness. Within 12 months, we have to revise our own laws. We have to revise any legislative and constitutional, we have to undertake any legislative and constitutional reforms. Not because the Congolese people want it, not because this is something that we need to do, but we have to revise it so that we can match what other people are asking the Congo to do. This is this is this is serious. In the Congo, people die so that there is no reform of the constitution. People went on the street because they did not want the constitution to be changed, amended. And when people are talking about, oh, but I don't think anything wrong with these agreements, why is it hidden? Why the Congolese people were not aware of these agreements prior to the signing? Why we don't have, or we didn't have, a public debate streamed live on television in all four national languages? Why there isn't any copy of this being presented to the Congolese people in French, in Lingala, in Swahili, in Chiluba, in Kikongo? Why? If there is nothing wrong. Why people are not able to go ahead and justify themselves in front of those that they claim elected them, because that's what they say, right? Tshisekedi got elected with what, 70% in 2023? We all know these elections. And we also know the election of 2018. Who really won the elections? So President Tshisekedi had no mandate to bring that type of agreement even forward, let alone sign it. So the infrastructure and economic cooperation here, the agreement here goes beyond the minerals. It really outlines the cooperation in transportation with the Lobito corridor. And it's actually interesting because that Lobito corridor talks about a few different aspects that needs to be taken into consideration. And I'm going to read it directly from Friends of the Congo's thread that is available online. If you go to our X accounts, Congo Friends, we put it forward to like explain folks what was going on regarding, particularly regarding, especially everything that I'm explaining to you, you can read it there. So it says something very interesting regarding the Lobito corridor, that infrastructure development is a central pillar, particularly the expansion of the Lobito corridor to include the Dilolo Sakanya line. Within 5 years, the agreement mandates that 50% of copper, 90% of zinc, concentrate, 30% of cobalt be exported through these routes. This is supply chain planning at a strategic scale to orient DRC minerals export to the Atlantic. So, what is outlined here in this economic cooperation with infrastructure, we have the transportation corridors. I just kind of pointed out the Lobito corridor. We also have the hydro power development. We have the trade logistic, and also industrial parks development. And that's the part that I even find funny, because in the previous agreements, the very first one, I believe, that was signed on June 27, they were talking about the co-management of the park. And I still ask myself a question: why do we include the co-management of a park in the peace treaty? That doesn't make sense. A park that is entirely in the Congo. You cannot stop, obviously, where plants grows. If plants want to grow over there, or people, animals wanting to cross the borders, you cannot prevent them from doing that, right? But the entirety of the park is located in the Congo. Yet they're talking about a co-management. So we're gonna have Rwandan folks coming, military officers or personnel coming in the Congo to manage our park. And that will provide peace to the Congo. supposedly, because it's including that peace deal. And then lastly, we also have the telecommunications. And I think the idea of even trying to integrate the Congo into this some sort of regional and global infrastructure network is nothing new. It's not the first time that happens. People will remember EAC, what was supposed to happen there. People will remember the Sarkozy plan, 2009, that he talked about creating a common space where Congo and Rwanda will be essentially handling the resources of the Congo. And in to go back in the infrastructures, right? And I'm a civil engineer by training. That's actually my main job. So some of those projects mentioned, uh, some of those projects mentioned include like major roads and railroads, and I talk about the Lobito corridor to really provide that expansion. And something very interesting on the Biden, that was this last year after Rubaya mine was seized by the M23. And for the little history, the Rubaya mine was owned by a company owned by Mwanga Shushu, who was a member of parliament, arrested and sentenced to death. He's still in jail. I'm not sure if he got released, but my last news, he was still in jail. And he was accused of essentially treason because he's in talks with M23. So this member of parliament used to be part of the CNDP, and people who follow the different iterations of the roundabout militias, the M23 used to be called the CNDP. So when the CNDP was, I would say, defeated or mixed into the army or whatever in their last Mouvement du 23 Mars, the March 23rd agreement of 2009, so some of them had agreed to join the government. Mwanga Shushu was one of them. And as a way to thank him, the President Kabila at the time rewarded him with a mine that the company that he created was allowed to extract minerals. Just like Kone Nanga, when he proclaimed Felix Tshisekedi president in 2018, when the true and rightful winner of the 2018 election was Martin Fayulu, as a reward, and he says that to the journal Le Monde, as a reward, what as Nanga is given, he's giving gold mines that Felix Tshisekedi later on was able to, I guess, take it from him, just like they took the mines from Wanga Shushu, that member of parliament that used to be, I would say, M23/CNDP, right? It's very important to know those things because when I was trying to talk about the Lobito corridor and Biden trying to strike a deal, Biden wanting the fighting to stop, wanting to stop the advancement of M23, because M23 was determined to move forward all the way to Kinshasa. President Biden offered that the construction of the Lobito corridor, which is like literally from the southeast province in Katanga all the way to the west of Africa, so in Angola and in Lobito, that he proposed or suggested just to kind of like calm down Kagame's appetite like a kid. That hey, Kagame, what if we do one from also Rubaya all the way to Katanga? Kagame said no, but I want to pause there. Kagame said no, obviously. But I want to pause there and ask y'all to also process things. Why would President Biden, why would the United States even ask Kagame permission? Rubaya is in the Congo. Seized by M23, yes, but it is Congolese territory. Why asking Kagame the permission to build a railroad from South Katanga all the way to Rubaya in the Kivu? We're talking about Congolese territory because the United States seems to be complicit or seems to be okay with Rwanda occupying the Congo. So back to the infrastructure conversation. So the US here frames the construction of those different infrastructure, the Lobito corridor, the railroads and stuff, as a response to an underdevelopment that is happening in the Congo. And again, it's always easy to blame the Congolese people and the government, the elites, because they are corrupt, that they have not been able to build infrastructures. That's right. But one cannot forget or ignore the role that the West has also played into the underdevelopment of the Congo today. That why it's very critical for them to only create roads and infrastructures that will facilitate the extractions of the minerals. You're not going to build roads in Bondal. You're not going to build roads in a populated area in Lubumbashi. So you're not going to do that. You're only going to create roads that will allow them to, and that's essentially what they're doing, to extract the minerals, and that's it. You're not going to create anything to really provide or facilitate an economic development of the Congo, of its population. So these infrastructure are built for export pipeline. And those corridors are built to move minerals. And that is completely different from the infrastructure built for local economic uplift. So road built to carry gold or minerals from mining zone to port. Rail lines designed to shorten the delivery time for foreign markets because time is money. The power plants meant to fuel processing plants owned by foreign investors. These are not inherently bad, right? But they must be also contextualized like I tried to provide or to do. Who would own this pipeline? The corridor, the Lobito corridor, I believe last time I read it was a 25 ownership of the US. 25 years. For 25 years, if my memory is correct, they will own the railroads. 25 years. Who controls the revenue? I talked about the tax break that Congo will provide to the US companies. 10 years, no taxes. That is also 10 years of Congo not getting any revenue. Because that's and I'm in the public sector. I know how companies or countries or cities and get revenue is through taxes. So when you're not taxing people, when you're not taxing the rich, when you're not taxing companies, how else are you going to get revenue? Because the Congolese people make less than 70% of them live with less than $2 a day. So who has the decision power over where and how infrastructure is being used? The answer is not Congolese. The answer is not Congo. The Congo will not own those pipelines and roads. I mentioned one of them. The Congo does not control the revenue. The Congo is literally being imposed to put a 10-year break when it comes to taxes. 10-year tax break, a tax stabilization. Let me use the correct term. Who has the decision power over where and how infrastructure is being used? Not the Congo. The Congolese people did not draft this this agreement. And these are the questions that are in the agreement that does not explicitly answer, that I'm answering with you right now. And in terms of security and defense, and there was a question, I would really like to know what is in the MOU in matter of defense and security. Well, good that I'm going into that. So another pillar of this partnership is to security corporations. And it's very important because people, when they talk about the peace agreement, they say, oh, the goal is to stop the war. The goal is to stop the war. While December 4th, that is signed. 2 days later, 200,000 people in Uvira flee. And then Uvira fell. Uvira was seized by M23, Rwandan-backed militia M23. People continue to die. Women continue to be raped. Children continue to work in the mines. And even people. So the agreement mentions institutional support in terms of the security, military, governance, corporations. The agreement mentions the institutional support, the anti-corruption framework, and training and technical assistance, and support for stability efforts in troubled regions. Funny, because the region is troubled, by the West first and foremost, because even if the region is troubled, somehow they have never had the issue with the supply chain. We continue to have every year iPhones, PS5, 4, 3, 2, 1, laptops, drones, military drones, civilian drones, electric vehicles. The technology continue to advance thanks to Congo's minerals. And even if we are in a troubled region, unstable region. But anyways, in theory, really, this means that these points mentioned in the, I would say, under the security corporation pillar or security and military, that these points are really meant to support Congo's government in building capacity, right? Capacity in responding local threats. That's what is put forward. That's the impression, that's the illusion. But when you read when you read carefully, that you will understand quickly that the security is really the security of those extracting minerals. The security in those like mining areas, I would say. So the question that I have for people is it Congolese vision of peace based on justice, accountability, and demilitarization? Or is it really a Western strategic lens, really focused on protecting mining zones, of maintaining that stable supply chain and making sure that all of this is favorable to geopolitical position in Africa? And it's important to also point out how the deal went, that the Washington Accord between the DRC and Rwanda, that's the first palier, the first tier. And then you also have the US who is pushing to sideline Chinese influence in Congolese mining, explicitly said. And also that long-standing tension over M23 and regional alliance. So going back to the peace and security, because we have to go back to the Washington Accord that mentioned the FDLR 43 times and mentioned the Congo threats, which is the M23 taking lands only 3 times, and the third time being mentioned in the glossary. The last page where you have the list of keywords, what abbreviation means, that's the third time that you're going to find the word M23. And they're sending the Congo, go negotiate in Doha with the M23. But here in Washington, D.C., in this agreement, we are going to tackle the issue of the FDLR as if FDLR folks have a uniform, are equipped so perfectly that they were able to overrun not just the MONUSCO forces, not just the Samia DRC forces, not just the South African forces, but also the Congolese forces, including the mercenaries, in complete violation of international law that Tshisekedi brought in the country. These are the forces that are right now taking territories that are twice the size of Rwanda. But they're relegated. That conversation, y'all go ahead and discuss in Doha. I just said December 4th, partnership signed. Tshisekedi not knowing what to do, where he is. He's showing the thing closed. Everybody's showing the signature. He's just showing like a whatever contract, whatever you call it, closed. He has absolutely no clue what he's doing there. And he's right to look lost, to be lost, to be confused, because few days later, Uvira falls. So security for who? Not for the Congolese people, not for the 200,000 Congolese people displaced just a couple weeks ago. Not for the 7.1 million people displaced. Not for the Congolese folks that are seeing the documents proving that their own lands, their Congolese, being confiscated, burned, and forced into buses to Rwanda. Read the Human Rights Report about the Rwandan Defense Force putting not just Rwandan citizens, but also Congolese citizens in buses and send them somewhere in Rwanda against the will. Read about that report that talks about Congolese folks losing trace of ownership of the lands. This is your house. This is my house. And here's a document to attest that this is my house. No, it's not your house. They confiscate everything. So security cooperation under this agreement here cannot really be separated from the geopolitical strategy, because it is inherently political, inherently strategic, to take resources, to take lands, and leave Rwanda as this agent that will manage on behalf of the United States the Congo. So we have covered the strategic asset reserve, the priority access for US corporations, the infrastructure corporations, the policy reforms shaped by foreign investment norms, and then the security cooperation tied to the geopolitical interest. So I want to ask this question again, because that's the title: strategic for who? Let me ask you again this question, and that is a central question of today's conversation. Who benefits? Who benefits? Certainly US firms and strategic priorities, stand to gain, honestly. They have managed to secure access to critical minerals. They have managed to reduce reliance on Chinese supply chain, which will reach 46% of the world cobalt reserve by 2030. That's in 5 years. Less than that. Because we're already in December 20th. They have managed to influence over Congo's economic direction. Because we also learned that, let me see if I can find that. That was also really ridiculous. Ambassador. Okay. Let me see. I think it was quarterly. There's this point about, yes, I found it. Let me share that with y'all. Crazy. To ensure transparency and alignment with shared economic and strategic interests under this agreement, the DRC, to the Autorité de Régulation de Contrôle des Marchés de Substances Minérales Stratégiques, shall notify the United States of any changes related to the cobalt export quotas or bans by the DRC. Shall notify the U.S. of any changes related to cobalt's export quotas or bans by the DRC. Such notification shall be for purposes of consultation and dialogue within the Joint Steering Committee, with due regard for the sovereign rights of the DRC to determine its export policy. Additionally, the DRC intends to provide quarterly briefings to the U.S. ambassador to the DRC that outlines a rationale, anticipated impacts, and implementation timelines for quota-related decisions. Like, so the Congo has to justify to the U.S. ambassadors what they're doing with the cobalt. Because remember, when they seized some of those minerals in mining sites in the North Kivu, the Congo went forward and banned the cobalt and other critical minerals export, which was quite honestly, that was a smart move, because they say, you know what, since you guys are controlling this area, you guys are illegally extracting minerals and selling them to other countries, we are going to ban the export of it. So if this is illegal, so it will be impossible for countries like Canada, France, the United States to even buy those minerals. But what do we learn? They can't even do that anymore. They shall notify the United States of any changes related to cobalt export quotas or bans by the DRC. And it's not it. They need to discuss with the Congolese ambassador, the US ambassador, about all of these changes. They need to report out. What sovereign country goes and report out to another? Who does that? There is a nice illustration that I created to kind of like show that. You see. This photo was really powerful, I guess. Let me see. Okay. Give me a second. I'm going to show you this photo. Yeah, essentially that is it. The Congo trying to explain what they did as a students reporting to the professor. This is what we are going to do. What do you think? Right? And the question remains. The question remains in terms of who controls the Congo today? Who really controls Congo's minerals? Who? That's the question for today. But for Congolese people, who should really be the first beneficiaries of their own, the picture is more complicated. The picture cannot be this. This cannot be the picture. For people who really want, for people who really, really want sovereignty, resource sovereignty, the picture should also not be this one. Having the Congo in between the fights of two mastodons, of two big country, a powerful country, China and the United States. The picture is more complicated than that. Actually, the picture shouldn't be complicated because these agreements could bring jobs, infrastructure upgrade, increased foreign investment, but it could also cement that foreign prioritization in the economic planning. Who gets the priorities? These agreements should also, or could also, reduce the national control over strategic assets. This agreement could also create dependency on a single global power for development framework. These agreements could repeat in a really new form of patterns of extraction and external control that the Congo has long resisted. This is another Berlin Conference 2.0. So what comes next? What should come next? What should come next for Congolese people? What should come next for the civil society, youth movements, the diaspora, who right now sounds really divided? Activists, scholars, and everyday people like y'all, friends, true friends of the Congo. Because this moment really requires us to pay attention, to keep an eye on the Congo, and close scrutiny of all implementation plans. It requires us to demand full transparency. And then again, none of these that I just shared with you are known by the public in the Congo. Asserting national ownership of Congolese resources. Are we or are we not a sovereign country? Are we aspiring to be a sovereign country or are we not? Or are we okay being subjugated to another power? And also ensure that the real value that those critical minerals, strategic asset reserve stays in the Congo and improve the lives of the Congolese people. And for that to happen, we need to resist that frameworks that really privilege foreign access over national sovereignty. No country will do what the Congolese president has allowed. The United States wouldn't do it. As a matter of fact, the United States is about to go to war with Venezuela. Other countries go to war to other countries for things that are not even theirs. But it is for the national security. Why did Russia invade Ukraine? National security. Ukraine as a sovereign country. Why did the US invade so many countries around the world? Why did France somehow had a military presence all over the Sahel before African people stood up or woke up? National security, national interest. National interest over resources that are not even theirs. National interest, national security over lands that are not even theirs. What about the Congo? What about the Congo? Because we're talking about Congolese minerals. We're talking about Congolese lands. So we must read these agreements not as a small or benign diplomatic rhetoric, but as a strategic text with real human consequences. We cannot allow one man who never won an election to essentially sell the countries like that. Because if you think that he has legitimacy to do that, if you think that he has legitimacy to allow foreign investors or companies to extract, you're wrong because you missed the history again where the Congolese people were protagonists, where the Congolese people were writing their own lines in this script. Because they rose from time to time against dictatorship, against Mobutu, against Kabila, father and son. They have organized and they will continue to organize because they understand that Congo's future does not belong to foreign bureaucracies, to corporate interests, or to the Congolese elite that was imposed to them. They understand clearly that the Congo's future should belong to Congolese people. And you, listening to us, what do you understand? You, friends of the Congo, What do you understand as a friends of the Congo? That's why we call friends of the Congo, because we really want folks around the world to rally and help us educate, learn, organize, and resist. So I hope you liked this episode. Feel free to go back and watch it. And any other episode that you missed, we will do our best to provide few clips so people can really understand. And if you have the opportunity to, please share this video. Please subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Please follow us if you're watching us on Instagram and X, Congo Friends, on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, and on Facebook, Friends of the Congo, Congo Friend. So this has been Congo Unfiltered, and I'm gonna send you also back to our website, freecongo.org, because we are at the end of December 20th. We are doing the end of the year campaign. We're trying to fundraise $100,000 to continue the effort that we have been making for when it comes to the Congo. There are many ways for you to be involved. Donating money, if you do have, or you feel kindly or generous enough, is part of it. $1, $2, $5, $10, whatever it means to you. And if you don't have money, it's okay. We got you. You can join our army of volunteers. You can write the letter to your representative if you're in the US and ask them that you do not want your tax dollar to fund the war overseas. So I will see you next time, and it was really glad to be with y'all. And yeah, I will catch you next week for perhaps maybe next week, maybe not, but we'll see. But for those who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas ahead of already, and Happy New Year. So, cheers.